Hello today. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Thanks for being here. I'm Tom Webster, and I'm a partner at Sounds Profitable and one of your hosts for this fine day. Thank you very, very much for attending this session. The next panel is going to be fantastic. It's the most star-studded panel that I have ever been a part of. So that's coming up in just a moment. First, though, we have a very special message. We have a guest in from ESPN, Clinton Yates. Clinton Yates is a writer. He is a TV, radio, and, germane to today, a podcast host. He is a writer for, I'm gonna make sure I get the shows correct, Undefeated and Anscape for ESPN, panelist on Around the Horn, contributor to SportsCenter. And he's here to give a special ESPN warm welcome about why podcasting. So without any further ado, Clinton Yates.
What's up, kiddos? How we doing? I just want to say thanks to everybody. This is I'll be honest, this is a new experience for me, so I'm really happy to be able to share all of it. So I'll start at the beginning, which is, for me, why does podcasting matter? Mainly because I first and foremost identify as a storyteller. That is my number one thing that I say to all people when they ask me what my job is. Journalist is one thing, host is another, yacker on TV is a third, but what is the most important to all of it is the concept of getting stories out there and telling them. And why does that relate to podcasting? It's pretty simple. Where do you first learn about the world? Where do you first learn about everything happening around you? And where do you learn about other things that you might be interested in? It's because somebody told you a story. And that's one of the things that ESPN, in my personal opinion, has not only allowed me to do with some level of aplomb, thankfully, but that's what everybody does as far as who I believe my colleagues are and what they can do well. So, podcasting, as it were, it exists in that space where somebody's telling you a story. And this is valuable ad space, not just in the real world, but in your mind as well. I've done radio, I've been a newspaper section editor, I've done a lot of things, and I know that personally for me, the reason why it matters is because I can feel the friends in my head, and I know that I'm listening to something that's going to matter to me. Podcasting exists in a couple of different forms. There is the recorded word, that is just something somebody was doing already that they've decided to put on a server or what have you. Or there's the curated experience, which me personally, and this is the part that I was really nervous about saying, as the new host of ESPN Daily, I really very much like being a part of. It is an elevated conversation that you're going to trust, that you're going to understand, that somebody who knows what they're doing, who likes what they're doing, and trusts and understands other people will do as well. Now, overall though, here's the main reason why I believe that podcasting is the next step. There's a lot of different things that people do, and I'm not here to talk S about anybody or anything like that, but there are people that just sit around on microphones and run their mouths and say whatever they like. There are people that, again, put what they want to on various tapes, and then there are people that curate stories that are designed for the kind of listener whose time and whose energy is extremely valuable to them. And in a world that we live in 2024, you're all here, we're all at a conference, we got this, that, and a third to do. There's schedules, there's different things to meet, there's all sorts of obligations that we have in life. And I feel that that is where podcasting does the most work and is the most effective. And for ESPN in particular, we've got a lot of very loyal fans. I could read the notes off my phone about the numbers, but I will tell you specifically that the most loyal, the most engaged, and the highest amount of hours of people listening, ESPN Audio dominates in that. And that's a big part of what we do, is that once you started listening, you don't have a reason to leave until you are asked to do so. And that is something I take a particular amount of pride in personally, because again, as a storyteller, what is the purpose of doing anything if you can't actually lead somebody through what you're trying to do? So I listen to a ton of podcasts. I mean, some of my favorites off the top, and I don't want to be vulgar here, but one of the really funny ones is two ladies whose name I don't know. It's called Guys We Blanked, and it's a really funny podcast about different stories of their lives and what they do and how that goes. Another one is called Normal Gossip, where it's three people who take in information about random stories in their lives, and they just read the gossip, and you learn everything about these other people's lives. And it's again, it gets to a part of who we all are that we don't get to share enough in public anymore, because quite frankly, we don't gather in spaces like this as much as we should these days. And that's why, in my personal opinion, it's the wave not just of now, but also of what we're going to be able to do for the future, because it's the only thing that we can make sure that we have, that if we miss it, we can go back to. And that is a large part of the reason why at ESPN Daily, we try to make sure that what we do sticks with you every day, even if it's just one thing. And I don't really know why people like certain stories. That doesn't matter to me, but what matters to me is that they do. And ultimately, I think what ESPN tries to do is marry what we have in the sports world, beyond, and within other people's lives, to try to make sure that it relates to every single thing that you understand or that you know. And that's what I try to do every day at ESPN Daily. And it's what I've tried to do over the course of the different years as a journalist of various types. So ultimately, I think that if you're here today and you're looking at me and you're of any interest at all in the podcasting world, you've probably been on a microphone, you probably know somebody who's been on a microphone, or you like listening to people on microphones because they have something to say that matters to you. And there's no real other way for me to indicate that other than just standing here and trying to do it by myself. So I want to thank everybody for coming out today, because like I said, I've never done this before, and I was really happy to announce to you all that I have a podcast, even though every brother in America apparently has a podcast. I don't care. All right, I'm Clinton Yates, and ESPN Daily is going to be a really fun one. But no, in all seriousness, as a format, as a matter of course, I really do feel that going forward in the future, what we can keep down on record, the stories that we can tell, the things that we can educate each other on, and the things that we can enlighten each other on, are going to be how we survive as storytellers, not just in terms of what we do, but in terms of what we believe and who we are. So that's all I got. I'm Clinton. It's nice to see y'all. Who do I hand this microphone to now? I wore my Star Wars sneakers, by the way, today, because I also have a Star Wars podcast. It's called Never Tell Me the Odds. It's fantastic. Check it out.
Thank you so much for being at this session. This is going to be a fantastic panel all about familiar voices in podcasting and how they've navigated the space. So we put together a really good group, and I'm going to introduce them all at once. The panel is going to be moderated by Brittany Luce from NPR, and It's Been a Minute. We are also joined, besides Brittany, with Nick Viall from the Viall Files, Christy Carlson Romano from the Vulnerable podcast, and Dave Coulier from Full House Rewind. So let's give them a big hand and bring them out.
I love all of you already. Okay.
Hello. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
And welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us today. All right. Let's get into it, because, we're here to really talk shop. Like, each of you has built an incredible business with your show after, pivoting from being so well known and loved on a completely different media platform for so long. So, to start off, I want to know, Christy, we can start with you. What motivated you to transition from your original media platform into podcasting?
It's interesting. So I've had several second acts, I guess you could say. I think the first second act was when I decided to become a YouTube creator.
Yes. I was always watching YouTube videos. Yeah.
I didn't grow up with social media. I'm very much like an elder millennial. So once I started seeing a lot of other Disney Channel actors benefiting off Twitter and sort of making these huge milestones, which really helped them succeed past Disney, I was like, well, I'm still, at Columbia University. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, if I'm going to be in front or behind the camera. So eventually, though, I decided to lean into it, because sometimes the only way out is through, and decided that my husband and I would team up. And we started making content, which ended up becoming a cooking show, and then some really interesting, I will call it almost like a digital memoir of sorts that was causing a lot of virality in my life at the time. But then, I think The idea of owning your narrative and then also building community is what really kind of sparked me to find podcasting. It was a very natural evolution, which it makes sense because podcasting is now everywhere.
It literally is
Right?
everywhere. It literally is everywhere. And podcasting also brought the two of you together, Dave and Christy. I know you all. I listened to your episode on Dave's podcast, so I know that you all had met long before that. But talk to me about how you made your transition into podcasting, Dave.
I was on a TV show.
Little show.
No, I wanted to do something different in podcasting. I wanted to do a television show that could also be a podcast. So when I met Brendan Rooney, Christy's husband, I pitched that idea to him and he said, absolutely, let's do it, 1,000%. And I said, I want to shoot our show like a television series so that as we expand, we can expand that format into lots of different media. Instead of just audio components, we can have visual components and we can build on that. And so once we decided that we wanted to do that, I realized I've never watched Full House. So the show that I pitched them was going to mean that wait, it gets better, ma'am, come back.
She's like running too. She's like, I'm out.
I'm going to finish this. So then I realized, okay, because we're going to be scripted, I'm going to have to watch all of these episodes and write these shows. So it was just a different way of starting a podcast with, I guess, a different ideology. And it's been a blast.
Yes, I know,
Did that answer your question?
No, it didn't. No, it absolutely
okay.
did. And it seems like it's been a blast. But Nick, we got to ask, how did you decide to get into podcasting? I was telling Nick before we started, my best friend from high school, she's never missed an episode. And she was like freaking out when she heard that I was going to be talking to you. And so, yeah, I'd really love to know, because for you, it's like, it's also a family affair as well.
Yeah, it's really been a blessing. For me, I come from a different show, The Bachelor, and a lot of people who come off that show are, it's like you don't know what to do with that opportunity. You're gifted, and you are often given a platform via social media, and there's just a lot of like, well, what should I do with this? And most people are kind of on social media trying to, that's like a lot of creators who built their platforms, they built their platform because they, maybe it's cooking or whatever it was, that they grew their audience by doing something that was, they're already passionate about. Where for me, I was gifted my platform for being on a TV show. And so people at first just followed me because of the character I was on the show, or they wanted to follow my quote unquote love story. And then afterwards you're just like, well, what do I do with this platform? And you almost have to retrain your audience a little bit. And so you're kind of trying all these different things, and it's hard to be vulnerable on social media and kind of show your life. And to me, it was like when podcasting came out, I felt like I was a bit long-winded, I was told that very often by people. But to me, it was a platform where I felt like I could share ideas and thoughts and just have interesting conversations. And then I could pick and choose the spots where I wanted to share parts of my life, but also bring on guests and just have conversations about life and romance and dating and pop culture. And it just kind of took off from there. But to me, it was just a way that it was a platform where I felt like this could be something I could actually build a career on, rather than, rather just posting videos and things like that. So for me, I was just looking for what is the thing that I could take advantage of, this opportunity I was given from being on TV, and then build my own thing from that. And podcasting was definitely the platform that worked great.
It's an interesting point that you make about like retraining your audience, because even listening to your show, there's a very specific like format. I work now in radio. I used to not work in radio. I used to work in podcasting. There's a difference between that and public radio, because like radio, people are listening like you're part of their routine. So it's like, 2 minutes in, they expect this to happen. 8 minutes in, they expect that to happen. And I was really impressed listening to your show because, you got a serious flow on there and things happen in a certain way. It's a very interesting approach to thinking about that, though, like retraining your audience. I'd really love to hear from you, Christy and Dave, about how, you all were able to sort of figure out how to, engage your existing fans, like existing fans or existing audience, and get them to tap into you in this new place.
Okay, would you like to? Yeah. Okay. Podco, which I'm co-founder, my husband in the audience, Brendan Rooney, is the CEO. I feel like my other half is not here, but he's right there. We are a video forward network, and what I find that, at least specifically in the female millennial space, for me as another female, it's like they really love the aesthetic. They really rely on that kind of engagement in a really intimate way. So I think it also transcends a lot of our other podcasts so that we can create viral moments online. And I was actually one of the first people to bring the idea. I was like, look, there's folks I saw Drew Afualo and other people who I admired who were really popping up with these amazing sets and amazing aesthetics. And I was like, listen, Podco got these amazing traditional Hollywood talent, right? Like Dave and the Ned's Declassified cast, and we will continue to do amazing things with those sort of tentpole people. And it's like we can utilize them by also navigating on a high elevated aesthetic level. So that's why we engage in a way that's video forward.
Interesting. That's really interesting. What about you, Dave? How do you think about it?
Well, and when I say we, the Full House cast, we love our Full House family. And what I mean is our fans. And so I knew that I wanted to give something back to those fans, but that they also were going to have certain expectations. And so when I originally started writing the first 10 episodes, I was writing them in a vacuum. I really didn't know what the fans wanted all these years later. And what they wanted, that we found out, was they just wanted to hear more about Full House, a show that they either, the first generation were the kids who watched it on ABC, or the next generation saw it in syndication, or those kids that originally watched Full House said, now my kids are watching Full House with me, and I'm getting to relive all those memories. So it was kind of taking all of that together and trying to do a visual representation of that. And when I first started, I had this idea of, I want to do Pee-wee's Playhouse meets Full House. So I had puppets that would pop in the window. So I had Comet the dog popping in, and I had the Mr. Woodchuck puppet popping in, and I created all these characters. And I realized quickly that's not what the Full House fans wanted. They wanted more of an ecocentric feel about each episode. So after those first 10 episodes, I went to Brendan and we kind of put our heads together, and I said, I really want to write this more right into the sweet spot that people love. And that's where we're at now. Yeah.
That's so interesting. I wonder, in thinking about each of your personal brands, how did you think about approaching your content from that perspective? Being able to show either an aspect of your personality maybe you felt like people didn't get to engage with before, or figuring out how to stay authentically yourself in a new medium. Nick, I'd love to hear from you about that.
Well, mine's really interesting because, again, I come from the reality TV space, and it's, if you're on reality TV, you often feel like you're shown a version of yourself, but not who you really are, or you're siloed into a certain type of personality. And so, like I said before, it kind of almost retrain your audience where, before I felt like people were following me to watch my life either through, as a fan or through judgment. Sometimes people watch reality TV to, hate watch and things like that.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. Now it's like I have an audience, instead of following me, to follow me, it's more to follow what I have to say, which feels more meaningful. And, and then I try to, figure out when you're on The Bachelor, your platform is generally women. And so here I was a guy who, had an audience of women, and unless I wanted to talk about, me searching for love constantly, which can be a bit exhausting, how do I continue to relate to my audience and have something that they'd be interested in saying that's also authentic to myself? And I've always been interested in social dynamics and interpersonal relationships, and I've always been a fan of pop culture myself. So, when I created my show that's why when people ask me what my show is about, I'll say it's a relationship and dating pop culture podcast. So we'll use pop culture events and TV shows that are about love and relationships and use that as a launching pad for conversations about real life relationships. And that will drive the conversation, and we just try to lean into that. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that was a great answer. That was really, you give me something to think about. This is good. Oh, you were going to say, Christy.
I think Nick is bringing up a really great point, which is the lens you bring, right, as the talent and as the creator, and your perspective. It's married to the concept of authenticity, which I find is always under a microscope. Are they really authentic? Is this what they really think? They're monetizing their content. How real are they? But it goes back to the lens and like how you retrain them into trusting you, and that you showed up to film this content because you care. On top of it being monetized, and it is a constant dance for people to understand you're showing up in that way. So the lens is really valuable, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you watched The Bachelor, you knew me as the unlucky in love guy, and so, and
I was that as Joey Gladstone on Full House too. Yeah.
I'm really sorry.
Never got a date.
But with puppets.
Jesse got all the
We need to buy you a puppet, Nick.
And I guess there was some truth to that from the TV show standpoint. And before I ever went on The Bachelor, I had my pitfalls in relationships as well. But I was also always the friend growing up that would give the tough love to my friends. And I was generally pretty good at giving relationship advice. And I learned a lot about relationships through my own failures, And so I was willing enough to be vulnerable where, I went from, I always say on reality TV, you get incredible access and no credibility. Going on reality TV, a lot of people are fascinated with you. So it opens up a lot of doors. A lot of people will meet you because they have questions about that world. But they don't meet you because, they think you have something to offer. You're just more of a, I don't know, what's the word I'm thinking of? It's just fascinated with you. And so I felt like I always had to earn my credibility. So when I started talking and offering relationship advice, it was a lot of like, why would we listen to this guy? And then it was begrudgingly like, wow, I guess he offers some pretty good advice. And so even still now, I still deal with when people discover my show and they realize where I come from, I think they're a bit surprised. It's like, why should I listen? But it's, the proof's in the pudding, so to speak, and which is almost, I appreciate because, I think what podcast offers as a platform is a stickiness with your audience. I think if you get people listening to your show, regardless of the size of your audience, there's a loyalty there. There's a community that you're building.
You become like a part of their life because they can hear you. Yeah.
When you offer them, sound advice or things like that, regardless, because I always just say, like when people call into my show or offer advice, there's not an episode you listen to where I say, listen, I am not an expert. I'm not a therapist. Just take or leave it. But this is my experience. And that's been helpful for me to connect with my audience.
Brittany, can I just say that Nick and we just met and we share two guys as friends, Josh Peck and John Stamos.
Right.
So we just took a selfie and sent that to John and Josh. And John started making fun of me right away. But we didn't realize it, but we're going to start a clothing line with flannel shirts, blue jeans,
I love that
and
for
brown
you.
boots. So
I love that for
Wait,
you.
but Dave, I want to ask you, one of the things that I was thinking about that where you kind of, you have a slightly different experience than, than Nick, of course. Sorry, Bachelor and Full House are two different experiences. But also with Christy is that whereas I grew up watching you on TV all the time, Christy, and you as well, Dave, but I grew up with you. So
Yeah,
when
like
you
literally
return,
same age,
right?
right?
So
Yeah.
so when you return as an adult and you're like, these are my experiences, that makes sense to me because we've grown up at the same rate. Whereas like you, Dave, like a lot of your audience grew up with you, and as you said, they like will come
I
up
just
to you.
have one more chin now.
He looks great.
You look great. You
He
really
looks really great.
No, but I mean,
I'm
how do you-
97 years old.
He looks so good for 97.
97.
But I'm wondering, how do you think about like how you wanted to like package and express your values in this new medium for somebody where people didn't grow up with you but grew up kind of on you? It's but they're meeting the podcast at a different stage in their
that's
life.
an interesting question. I have to stay true to the subject, which is Full House and people's love of the series. And it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I have to constantly be aware of that. You know, so many people have come up to all of us, the whole cast from Full House, and they say, you know, you were my television family. You know, I didn't have a great childhood, but you were my family on Tuesday and Friday nights, especially TGIF, that I could feel like I was part of something. So that's always, as a writer of this now, looking back at the show and discovering all these new moments that I've never seen before, I had to be very aware of that element with fans. I had to kind of share the love, but also understand that they're looking at it through a different lens too, as kids, as adults, and now you know, a different generation. So so it was a lot of pieces trying to come together to make something that everyone would enjoy.
That's so interesting. I wonder. I mean, look, I've been in podcasting for a long time. I started in 2014. Oh my God, that's 10 years ago. Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been doing it. I started 10 years ago, and I've seen things change.
1944.
That's how I feel, and that's how a lot of my colleagues look at me now, I think. But I've seen things change so much, and I know, and I'm sure you know as well, that advertising is always something that you're trying to crack and figure out, and you know, figuring out which brands are the right fit, and you know, and how are you gonna pay the bills and keep the lights on. I would love to hear more from each of you about how you have figured out how to make advertising work for your respective shows and businesses, because I mean, I listen to all y'all's shows. I mean, y'all are reading ads, so the money's coming in. But how have you figured out how you want to work with advertisers and what's worked and maybe if you want to share, not worked for you?
Go ahead, Nick.
Not to sound cliche, but it really is just about authenticity, you know? Again, when we're doing our show, you know, we're just trying to always talk about things that we're passionate about, things that we're interested in, you know, just the content we're talking about. And with that, you know, we kind of embed our lives and our interests. And so when we have an opportunity to do ads, you know, my hope is that our ads don't necessarily feel like ads. You know, certainly there's certain copy we have to read and things we have to touch on.
Yeah.
But I'm offended when people are, you know, the idea of someone would forward through an ad, because to me an ad's part of the show. And I want to have as much creativity and fun with our ads, obviously as long as we touch on the points that the brands are looking for. But again, it's a way to talk about the things that have affected our life. I mean, you know, the mattress, you know, me and Natalie sleep on, we're obsessed with it. We're diehard customers.
And I'll say,
What's the promo code?
I believe it.
And they're, you know, Helix is a sponsor of the show, and I light up every time I get to read that ad, because I'm passionate about the mattress I sleep on, or the cookware we cook on. And so when we actually get to promote brands that we use every day or are part of our life, or whether it's me or, you know, other people on the show that we have, you know, we refer to them as the household, but yeah, it's just fun, you know, and I think that draws more sponsors and have, you know, and wants brands to connect with, you know, be a part of our show, because, you know, they're embedded into what we're talking about.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd love to hear from you on this,
Sure.
Christy, because I mean, when I think about the demographic that you're a part of and that you appeal to, millennial women, that is an increasingly important advertising sector.
And it's also complicated. Not to interrupt. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, I would love to hear more
Sure.
about that, and also how you think about enticing brands to work with you for your show.
That's exactly where I was going with it. There is a big difference we're finding in our data and the way that we've observed my brand and then the Podco universe, I guess you could call it, and all the brands of those individual celebrities. And it's aspirational versus inspirational, right? Like, so whereas when somebody sees, a TikTok star coming up and now they've reached, I think, velocity with being on the Oscars red carpet, they're more of a journalistic medium, and that's amazing for them, and that's fantastic that they're able to take the bull by the horns. And then we have to approach it differently, where we see very different trajectories for traditional celebrities. And so even if they haven't been on shows for a while, the way that our advertisers connect, especially if they've grown up with us, I find there's a lot of millennial women that are buyers right now and representatives of buyers. So they know me. There's already like a shorthand, or they know Dave and of course Nick. And it's like one of those things where there's already, I don't have to explain to you my value. It's kind of already understood. So that's fantastic. But the complication comes in the inspirational, where you see a Chris Olsen from TikTok and you're like, let's root for him, or maybe we'll throw him in Paris Fashion Week and what kind of cool voyeuristic content he makes. And seeing someone who's considered a celebrity, starting like Keke Palmer or something, starting to wear, the brands and be at the places and do the things.
Like the aspirational aspect.
The jump can be so much faster. And like I said, the awareness is already, that person, like you said, they grew up with you. So it's like decades of influence that you are able to get from
Interesting. That's so interesting. How about you, Dave? How do you think about well, first of all, your ad reads are hilarious because you are good at bringing a full house pun around for every single brand that you work with.
Well, Brittany, I started in the world of advertising when I was a struggling stand-up comic. I went to work for an ad agency and I was a copywriter, so I understand what clients are going for in the ad world, and certainly with Full House, we're afforded this luxury of having a very wide family dynamic. So the demographic is really, really a wide universe. It's from little kids to grandparents. So that's kind of the luxury that we have just because of the nature of the family.
That's incredible. That's almost impossible to find, I feel like, in advertising.
We're a trusted brand, but going back to what Nick said is I try to have fun with them. Because sometimes you don't want to lean in. You kind of want to almost play against type. Like, we do some ads that could be taken very seriously. So I don't want to make fun of that so much as have fun with it. So I try to have fun with the copy and bring part of myself to each of these reads, because I agree with what Nick said, is that it's part of the show, So it's like, well, I really kind of have built a standard with the show, so I want the ads to kind of live up to that same standard.
No, and I think, the thing is that when I hear, also too, I think because you all are so experienced at being on camera, both as yourselves and as characters, that there's a different quality to the ad reads also that comes across very authentically in a way that it feels like it's folded into the show, which I think is also something that's really important for being able to approach advertisers, that you can really connect with listeners. That's the thing that they care about the most. I'm wondering, as you each have worked in, other platforms before coming to podcasting, what are some of the things that you've had to adapt to or to learn to become successful in podcasting? Nick, you seem ready.
Well, I just think you just have to always evolve. I think we're closing in on 750 episodes on my show.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
And when I think about what my show was at episode, 5, there's hints of what it is now for what it was, but it's drastically different. And so I'm always trying to keep it fresh and think of new ideas and just try to adapt and grow with my audience. And as we've expanded, and to me, we have one show, but we have 3 different shows embedded into my show.
Right.
And there's a bit of strategy behind it. So we have our Ask Nick, which is just relationship driven. People call in, share their relationship stories.
And you give good advice.
Thank you. And we offer some advice. Some people listen for the advice. Some people just listen because they like listening to other people's problems. But those episodes are evergreen, Episodes that we recorded 3 years ago, relationship stories never go out of style. Other shows, then we have our reality recap, which is very pop culture, very talking about current events, current TV shows. So those drive the conversations on its own. So those are very content-giving episodes. And then we do our interviews with, relatable and popular public figures. And sometimes those are more evergreen depending on the guest, and sometimes, for example, we had the opportunity of interviewing Gypsy Rose right out of prison.
Great episode.
Yeah.
Thank you. And that might, a year from now might not be as significant as it was when we got to do it. And so when I get a guest like Gypsy, to me it's like, that I'm going to see a bump in listeners, and my hope is that the other shows that we have and the quality that we put into the shows, the question is how much of those listeners that are tuning into my show for the first time are going to stick around. And if they do stick around, those evergreen episodes that I have, they can go back and binge. So there's hundreds of Ask Nick episodes that if they find my show and they're very interested in finding love or just struggling with their own relationship or just kind of fascinated in other people's lives, there's a whole catalog of shows that they could go back and listen to. And so it's just like I have shows to bring audience members in, and I have shows to keep them. And so I keep trying to evolve that strategy and just keep trying to think about what's going on in the zeitgeist of pop culture and podcasting. And we're always constantly thinking about what can we do next.
So smart. My husband's over there. He's like, that's smart. Podco's interesting. We have very different focuses for everything that we greenlight. We're really lucky with Dave because he does have such a 4-quadrant kind of thing happening over there, But when it comes to our loyal, amazing audiences for Neds, they're very different than our Wizards of Waverly pod. Their personalities are different, their profiles are different. Yeah, are there some similarities in the Venn diagram of the demo? Yeah, but their interests are different. And so trying to find the sweet spot of catering to each of those on any day of the week, because we really try not to cannibalize our
right.
You know what I'm saying, all of our various podcasts. And like my main podcast, which is Vulnerable, is very mental health focused. It's got a lot of hard topics at times. Another thing I'll mention, when you had mentioned Gypsy, I couldn't get her yet. I couldn't get her. She's stuck in Louisiana. But we did DM, and now she follows me. I have very parasocial relationships with my guests. I'm a little bit of a hustler. I'm a little bit of bootstrapping it. Me and my husband, who's a former Marine, we kind of like really created everything from the ground up. No outside financing as of yet. A lot of my like Walmart sponsorships will sometimes be like, let's greenlight this new thing. We are having such a blast because nobody's like telling us what to do. So we're greenlighting ourselves, which is a part of the beauty of this process for us. And we really do love working with new sponsors and like I said, finding new audiences to cater to.
Dave, I'm wondering, even from a creative perspective, like what have you discovered since, discovered about like whether that's the way that you, like things that you might like to try that might work in this new platform, or just discovered about the creative process? What have you sort of learned about yourself or how you work from transitioning into podcasting?
Well, with Full House, we're kind of locked into an era of mullets, the Beach Boys, and Tiffany. So we have to play into that,
right,
but also keep the conversations when I have guests on to today, relevant to today. We had our friend Josh Peck on the episode, and I was asking him about Oppenheimer, but we have to kind of button hook everything back into Full House and kind of keep everything under the roof. We don't want to stray too far off. We want to make sure that we wrangle it back in and get back to that subject matter that people love.
Which makes sense because it is an anchor point, right? Like that show is so transcendent that's the anchor.
Yeah.
I wonder, how do you think about approaching balancing that approach between the creative and the business side of things? Like thinking about making content that's fresh or that's pleasing or fun to make, while also thinking about keeping in mind sponsors and keeping in mind your schedule and everybody that you have to work with, and making sure that you have all of the business side of things taken care of. How do you balance those two things? Anybody want to start? Dave?
When I was 19 at the Comedy Store on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood, Robin Williams was the biggest comedy star in the world. And he saw my set that night. I had a pretty good set. And he came up to me afterwards and said, "Oh, you're a funny." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Oh, thank you." He said, "Oh, you're really funny. And, what are you going to do?" And he said, the most important thing you need to remember is that show business is 10% show and 90% business. And that thought stayed with me, and here's the biggest comedy star in the world telling me, treat this like a business. And I've never thought about that. So that balance for me is have fun, do something that you love that makes you laugh and makes you feel really good about doing, and the business part will come. But you always have to be thinking of that business component first and foremost, because you're not going to last very long if you don't have a great business model.
Very good point.
Yeah, I would just echo what Dave said. I mean, before I went on TV, I was in sales selling software for a company called Salesforce. And some of you guys might know about them. And so when I came out to LA, in my mind, I went from selling software to selling myself, and to me, I knew what I was giving up. I had a great job, I had a job I enjoyed, a nice income, and I gave that all up to try to make it out in Hollywood. And so to me, I was always kind of measuring that against what the job that I had, and so I wasn't out here to kind of go to the parties and network. I was there to work, and so everything I was doing, I woke up on a Monday. I didn't necessarily have a place to go, but my mindset was Monday through Friday that you're working.
Right.
And so work was maybe taking an improv class or taking a meeting or just, I always just trying to keep myself busy. And then once things kind of picked up, you're always, to me, it is work. I'm lucky enough that I love what I do. And now I have a team of people I'm managing, and now I'm doing monthly reviews and things like that, which is, nothing I thought I'd be doing once I moved out to Hollywood. But it's great. And as far as the content, if you enjoy doing it and if the quality's there, again, the ads will come, and to me, just the business side of it is just, again, trying to stay, current. Right now we're trying to look at different technologies that we can invest in to make us more efficient, when it comes to the editing process and just the creative process, what tools are out there to keep us, cutting edge and things like that. And other than staying on top of that, as long as the content's there and we're having fun, it usually works out.
Oh gosh, repeat that question for me.
I'm wondering how do you approach it or balance? How do you balance the creative aspects along with the business aspects?
It's very hard as a parent with young children who lives in Austin to basically be going back and forth to be filming 2 different podcasts, co-hosting one and then being a solo host on the other. I traditionally have gone in for 4 days at a time, and I'll do 6 episodes back to back to back. I'm always very curious about how you're such a powerhouse and how that's sustainable, and now you're a new dad. It's always really wonderful to connect with other folks, to be it's not all easy, right? It is very hard. So Well, yes, it is. It's really lovely to get to like book an amazing guest, and you know that's going to convert, and you know that's going to be cool.
Right.
And then sometimes a news cycle, it actually kiboshes the conversion that you would have otherwise got, right? You can't help that. You still are kind of in a journalistic medium in that way when you're posting online. You have to compete with everything on the internet. But yeah, I think I think that yes, while it is fantastic and over time you learn how to get that loyalty there, it's not easy.
Yeah, I mean, one question that's been on my mind is how you all think about measuring success. I mean, obviously everybody seems to be creatively fulfilled by the work that you're doing, but I wonder, like, in terms of business metrics and like audience growth, how do each of you define success? Nick, you seem ready to answer.
Saying I picked up in my Salesforce days is shavings make a pile, and I really am passionate about that idea, because to me it's just all about long-term growth, because you can't live and die by the peaks and valleys of, having a great guest.
Absolutely.
And then, like, oh, how do you follow Gypsy Rose, things like that,
Yeah.
But again, if over time, our growth looks like this, then I'm happy, and to me it's just, because sometimes you might book a big guest and it falls through, and again, emotionally it can be really draining to really, hang on to those peaks and valleys. And so you just try, to me it's always the long game vision, how much do we grow over the course of a year or 2 or 3 years, and as long as there's consistent growth, that's generally how I measure it, because I can get really bogged down in the analytics, so I try not to, because sometimes it's almost has an adverse effect, because I'll get too granular, and so I try to look at it from a 30,000 foot view, and as long as we're growing over time and just having small successes that add up over and over and over, that tends to work out.
Full House, believe it or not, didn't start out as a big hit. We were panned by the press. Tom Shales from the Washington Post said we were a direct ripoff of a movie called 3 Men and a Baby. This show will never work. And when you're a brand new TV series, you hear that stuff and it's like, wow, maybe we're not going to make it. And our executive producers, two men who had produced Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy, Family Matters, Step by Step, Tom Miller and Bob Boyette, they pulled us aside and they said, don't pay attention to what anybody else is saying, because there's an audience that is growing behind the scenes that loves you. This is one man from the Washington Post, that's his opinion. And so what that experience gave me is kind of echoing what Nick said, is, you can't live through the peaks and the valleys. You have to really just kind of look at how are we growing and be patient with that, and really kind of stay true to yourself and just stick with what you feel is working, and be very comfortable in that. Because when we first started Full House Rewind, I didn't know what the audience wanted. And so we started out like gangbusters, and then because of the SAG strike, because
you
Full House,
you paused production, yeah.
Full House was a struck show because it's from Warner Brothers Studios. So they asked us to stand down, and we wanted to be, we wanted to honor the actors and the union, and so we did. And so once we did that, all of our metrics just caved. And they kind of punished us when we came back, saying, oh, well, you went away, and now we're going to kind of punish you electronically and digitally. And we couldn't think about that. We thought, wait a second, we have great audience response. It's building, and we're seeing this. We're seeing the show climb. So you really kind of have to listen to your own inner creative voice at that point, and just kind of trust yourself.
Success is an interesting word, especially in our climate right now. It's like, am I successful if I'm not problematic? Am I successful if, you know what I'm saying? It's like, how do you define yourself as a success, as a public person and a content creator? Look, I think that was hard. That was hard to stand by and know what an amazing show that we had and how we wanted to comply with SAG's rules as a company, and to see just such an amazing start that it had, and sort of watch it now come back. It really is gratifying to hear you say that, Dave, and I really appreciate you coming all the way to Austin for all this. And it's such a beautiful thing that's being built. I think success for Podco is the legs. Like right now, we're starting to see a lot more interest, and we're booking for several podcast live shows. And that to me is a big way to like connect and engage, and also like invite sponsorships of a whole new breed. You know, we look at things in almost like a 360 lens as well, or model, so that you're not only necessarily able to advertise on the show, you know, pre-mid, whatever.
Right.
But you could also probably go out, because we have such amazing compliant talent. They're like, sure, I'll go on my socials and post for them. You know, like we are very like all inclusive. Like we just want to grow. We're very ambitious right now.
You each have had so much success in this space, and definitely seem primed to continue. What advice would you give to an influencer or somebody who is already, you know, experiencing success on another media platform? What advice would you give them if they, you know, wanted to go into podcasting?
I would say trust your instincts, and no one has ever walked in your shoes. So you need to really kind of stay true to your own path and really stay on it, and trust that what you're doing is going to have some pitfalls. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be times when you're not successful, you know, coming out of the gate. It takes time to build that audience. And I think that the way you do that is by staying true to what you really believe that whatever your podcast is going to be about, staying true to that. Because the minute you see, oh, that's not working, and you try and, you know, change something, that throws your audience. Your audience, you know, familiarity breeds familiarity, and people feel a great comfort in having that familiar feeling when they come back time and time again to listen to you. And I think that that's a very strong component, is just trusting that.
That's all great advice. One simple thing I would add is make sure that you want to do it. You know, when it comes to podcasting, the barrier to entry is nothing. Anyone can start a podcast. You know, a couple bucks, you buy a microphone, figure out how to, you know, put it online. You know, whether it's your manager or team telling you should do a podcast, or, you know, or because everyone else is doing it, if you're not passionate about it, you know, it's fun. It can be very rewarding, but it's a lot of work. It's very time consuming, and you have to love it, because to come up with the next episode can be very challenging. You know, everyone has they'll sit down with friends at a house party or at the bar, and everyone's like, oh, this would make a great podcast, and it probably would, but like now you get to episode 4, it's like, what the hell do we talk about now? So yeah, you have to want to do it, you know, and so don't do it to be a follower, or don't be pushed into it. And then my other advice would be just, you know, understanding that, you know, for me especially when we're talking about like pop culture or, you know, current events, you know, we treat that aspect of our show just like a sports fan. I'm a huge football fan. You know, I can't get enough of football podcasts. And I love the Green Bay Packers, and I love hating the Minnesota Vikings, you know. And I have to remind myself that my audience sometimes either loves to love me or loves to hate me, or loves to agree with me or loves to disagree with me. And I don't really care which one it is. I just care that they care. Because there's nothing worse than indifference, or people not having an opinion about what I'm saying, because then they're not listening. And the people disagreeing with what you have to say, they listen to every episode. But that can be a strain on your mental health. So you have to have perspective as well when you go into it, and actually appreciate a disagreement and discourse rather than be resistant to it.
Amazing. Love that.
But if that happens, then you can be a guest on Christy's podcast.
Yeah.
Or I could be on Nick's.
Talk about my mental health and decline.
I think you need to understand the marketplace and see how competitive it is, because it is, like I said, like we're you know, very video forward, and we understand that as we put a lot of money into that, into the production costs.
And you
of
can
that.
see it on the screen, yeah.
Again, self-finance. And it's like, no, we want to put our best foot forward. That is our goal. And also too, with the inspirational, aspirational thing, we have people who, if they are not on active shows, we want to make them look their best. And we want people to understand that they really are amazing. You know what I'm saying? So if you're going at this alone, look at the marketplace, be very realistic about what's the best product that you can put out in a competitive marketplace, and do that.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice.
Podcasting is a lot like the early days of television. And, in those early days, you could do whatever you wanted because a lot of it was started with local television affiliates. And that's kind of what we're experiencing with podcasting. If you have an idea, like Nick said, you buy a microphone, you find a way to put it up on the web, and you do a show. So, it's a great opportunity. This is a great time to be starting a podcast. And the one thing that will carry you through is the passion. I'm going to go back to that again. Just, you can do whatever it is. If you want to do a show about tennis shoes, do a show about tennis shoes. But just make sure you're passionate about that show about tennis shoes. So it really is a wonderful time to be starting. And it's a wonderful time to be creative in any way you want. And that passion will hopefully just carry you through to a successful show.
Wonderful advice. Wonderful advice. Well, thank the three of you so much for answering these amazing questions. I want to turn, though, now to the audience. We got a hand raised. So I didn't have to say what to do. But please raise your hands if you have a question, but right up front, right here.
Hi, my name's Amanda.
Oh, we even have a microphone
I was going
here.
to say, oh yeah, I think that y'all have a microphone.
This is like the Sally Jesse
I
Raphael
could
show.
hear her just fine.
Or Oprah.
Although I was going to say, you
Early days,
were
yeah.
projecting, so
She
good
was-
job.
Yeah.
But,
Sally Jesse.
oh, go
Hi.
right ahead.
Hi, my name is Amanda. I actually have a question for Christy. Well, first and foremost, just want to appreciate what you're doing as a strong woman and the confidence you bring towards women all around. My question is, as someone who manages Podco and also is a part of 2 podcasts, I'm someone who's a full-time media director and host my own podcast. How do you balance or prevent burnout from all the great things that you're doing?
I batch content. I think that's something that a lot of sort of online creators tend to try to do to sort of balance it. It's kind of a hack. It's still hard, because I'm traveling to a very different location than, my local, although that could change. I would love nothing more. I love Austin so much. I would love nothing more than to have a huge, studio here. And who's to say that we don't do that in the future? It'd be fantastic. But no, I batch content. And thank you. That was a very lovely compliment. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carmen. I'm an AI specialist, and I have a science communication project around how to demystify concepts in that field, right, and bring the social impacts of that to the fore as well, to share that information with folks. So I have kind of 2 questions. One, Nick, you talked about strategy around content to bring people in and content to keep people, coming back. Can you talk a little bit about how you define what those 2 will look like? How did you experiment on? Did you already come into it with this is going to be my content that's going to bring people in. This is going to be my content that keeps people coming back. And then second, unrelated question is, any thoughts on, to everyone involved here, around managing bilingual content? So creating content in more than one language, because that is also something that I feel with. Thanks.
I would say everything I learned was on the fly. When I started my podcast, I didn't know anything about podcasting. So it's been just a very, quick on-the-job learning experience. But once we started having success, the goal was always to grow. So, in the back of my mind, I was like, well, how do we keep growing? And then kind of once I understood the marketplace and realized the different, things that we were doing on the show, then it kind of popped in my head, like, well, because then you have these metrics, retention rate and things like that, and, people who find your show and the people who drop off and things like that. So I started looking at the different metrics and then started figuring out, well, what works with, each one. And then another aspect of just like growing the show or just bringing in new audience members, something that's really been big for our show. About a year and a half ago, we've been on social media a lot, and first it was, just making cut up clips of the different segments that we're talking about, whether it's a pop culture topic or relationship advice, and that was really good marketing for the show, and that would bring people in, especially the relationship driven stuff. Or the relevant guests. But then when we have a guest, what we started doing is just making these really dramatic, like what we're like movie quality sizzle reels for a podcast, And the reason why I was actually texting with John Stamos earlier is because we have this idea for our next guest where we want John to be a part of it, and we put a lot of thought and preparation into these sizzle reels for a podcast that most people don't think to do, but a lot of these videos will go viral and they'll reach audiences that I never expected, and people are just like, well, what is this show about? And again, if I'm just trying to get some person to just try the show, just tune in once, and then we believe in what we're doing, that they'll stick around. So that in terms of the growth strategy, social media and trying to just play in that playground and be creative and just try to do things that other people aren't doing. It was just like, the thought was like, why would you make like a movie type quality sizzle reel for an audio podcast? Well, it's no one else was doing it, but it seems to really work because it's attention grabbing. It's like I want it to feel like must listen or must watch content, and that's been very good for the show.
Oh, the bilingual thing, I do want to just mention. Sure. I'm currently working with a company called 11 Labs. They're an AI-based company where they will actually manipulate your voice once you consent and write all the contracts. And you will be able to have your voice in every single language. So I think it's kind of cutting edge, but it's really fascinating in terms of maybe that's something in the future that inevitably ends up happening.
Yeah, to just echo that, in the past just few weeks, I've been having a lot of conversations and meeting around what AI can do for our business, and that's exactly what you said.
Yeah.
It's wild, the technology that's out there, and yeah.
Like I said, consenting
but
to say.
Yeah, your ability to be able to take your voice and put it out in every language that's out there is around the corner, and it's kind of quite fascinating.
Sorry, just to clarify the point of that question, it was more around I'm bilingual and I do create content in 2 languages, but my issue is around like how to reconcile and like make sure I'm not alienating one. Like if I'm just doing one channel, I'm not alienating one audience when I'm putting one language.
Do you put them in the same feed?
I've like started doing that and then I split and now I'm trying to figure out.
No, I would keep them together.
And then it's just
Keep them together. Anybody that I know that has the most successfully been able to do, at least most my friends or colleagues who've done it, they've done Spanish and English, and they'll release both episodes at the same time on the same day. They just have both episodes in both languages ready to go, and they keep them all on the same feed, and it makes it so that both audiences can stay in lockstep together. Glad it helped. Go ahead.
My name is Spree. I'm the host of the Women in Tech podcast, and like Brittany, I've been in podcasting since 2014. My question is pretty simple. I've dealt with a lot of different types of monetization for my podcast, and because podcasting typically is psychologically deemed as a free medium, free entertainment, what would you all suggest to make it worth paying for? Because in some countries it is really popular to contribute towards podcasts and be members of private feeds, and then some podcasters like myself really struggle with people wanting to pay for the content, and I would love to really lean into a membership model rather than always relying on sponsors. Thank you.
So yeah, I mean, I think that what you're feeling is pretty common. I think my advice would be just to start it, because you're always going to be met with resistance. As soon as we have a premium option at the Vial Files we call it Vial Files Plus, and we do it through supporting cast, and it's been really great. And yeah, at first you're going to get 1.5% of your audience, maybe 2 if you're lucky. If you get 3, you're a rock star. And everyone else is very resistant, and you'll hear the noise and the complaints, but just start it and do it, and it will grow over time.
So to clarify, I did.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
My question specifically, what kind of content would make it more valuable?
Oh, you're saying what kind of exclusive content should you offer pertaining to the Women in Tech podcast?
For us, it's always what we refer to as Viophiles adjacent. Like it's not like, for example, we have a pop extra, which is like pop culture topics we didn't get to talk about in the week that we didn't talk about on the show. We talk about a lot of reality TV shows on the regular show. There's a million other reality TV shows we don't cover, and we recap it on Viophiles Plus. We do our advice section, and a lot of people got into the follow-ups, what happens next. So the updates of the callers we'll put behind Viophiles Plus.
And you probably tease it, right? Do you tease it?
Yeah, we
you have
tease
to promote it in
and
your
so
main.
it's just something that is, very similar to what we're doing on the main feed. That for your hardcore fans, where they can't get enough of, it's mimicking what we're doing, but just a little something extra, or a little value added. So you want to definitely stay consistent with what you're doing, but just a little bit more granular. And that's you're not going to get everyone. You're hoping to get the die-hard fans who just can't get enough of what you're doing, and just get as many of those as possible.
Thank you.
Hey, so thanks so much for this really cool panel. I have a podcast, and recently just hit top 10% most downloaded in the world. I am getting a lot of attention. I don't really know how to handle it. I'm feeling very overwhelmed. Did that ever happen to you? And what did you do? What strategies did you use to manage attention?
Well, first, congrats.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Sounding obnoxious, it just kind of happened.
Well, listen, I was able to cut my teeth by going on reality TV, and I was, if you didn't watch, I was the villain on the first
Yeah,
season,
you were.
and that came with a lot of criticism and a lot of heat, and I learned very quickly not to read my own press, protect my mental health. I tell people, my peers who go on the show, the positive comments are more dangerous than the negative comments, because if you are going on, we are not made to hear the opinions of the world. Social media is not, good for our brains in that way. And so, the reason I say that is because if you're in your comments, you're amazing, you're amazing, you're amazing, you're like, wow, I am amazing. And then all of a sudden that negative comment slips in there. And if you're believing the positive ones from a bunch of strangers you don't know who don't know you, and you're believing those, then your subconscious brain tells you, well, I have to believe the negative one. So believe in what you're doing. Obviously what you're doing is working. The numbers show that. And so back to what I said earlier, just be glad that they care. And know that what you're doing is working, and keep your head down, keep working, and I would just not listen to the critics, whether it's good advice or bad advice. What you're doing is clearly working. So, advice from the audience, it's nice to have praise, but I feel like it handcuffs you creatively, because all of a sudden you're like, well, they want me to do this and they want me to do that. Well, you stop listening to yourself when you do that. Yeah, no problem.
All right, last question.
Hello, everyone. My name is Steven Seidel, and I created a podcast as well. It was called Wolves Among Us. And traditionally, maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago, when podcasts were rising, there were a lot of limited series. So that's essentially what we did, is we created a limited series. But now we're getting a lot of pushback because people want to have this always on. It kind of seemed like maybe 2, 3 years ago, you could build a really viable audience and then use that for derivative deals to TV and movies. Are you all experiencing that as well, in terms of when you're creating your content? And if there's mine was about people with double lives, but if you're creating this always on podcast, is it something that you're seeing in terms of turning these podcasts? Are you all planning to develop them, and are you seeing that trend?
When you say develop them, you mean the IP of them?
Yeah, to build it out, to use it as an IP channel. Have you seen that that's become less popular, more popular?
We have some really big ideas in the always-on space that have not been met in the marketplace yet. We're really excited about the idea of fast channels. And so I do think that there is a way in a future I think Snapchat's also, if TikTok does end up getting banned, I think Snapchat might be the future. I think you'll always have to be looking towards the next thing because it's always on. I think it's always developing too. So you got to be kind of plugged into things.
Yeah, and no matter where you are in the process, everything's always negotiable. It's always a wide open negotiation. And what I mean by that is this is constantly changing. The landscape of podcasting, television, radio, everything is always changing. So there's always going to be new opportunities to negotiate. So I think you just have to be aware that you kind of have to go with the ebb and the flow and just be aware of what can be new and what the possibilities are. Because you're always going to be able to negotiate a new deal about something.
Thanks. Can I get the little jackalope as well? Can I get one of those?
That's a $750,000 charge, I was told.
Well,
Fast
seriously.
as fast can be, you'll never catch me. I am so immature.
Well, Dave, Nick, Christy, thank you all so much.
Thank
it
you
was a
for
real joy
coming.
to talk
Thank you
to all
very
of you.
much.
Thank you all
Thank
for
you.
great questions. Here we go.
Okay.